I'm excited to get started and take you on a deep dive into Kahua's asset-centric offering. And by the poll results, it looks like you should have a good journey today. So thanks for spending some time with us. All right, so in this overview, we are going to cover a few key things. So one, I will take you on a journey to see how you can capture asset data in Kahua for your projects, how you can link essential documentation to your assets throughout the project lifecycle, how you can also view the data collection progress, and then how at the end of all of this, as you have multiple projects, you'll have a knowledge base of asset information. And then lastly, we'll talk about the integration capabilities with Kahua around the assets as well. So first, before I go on the demo, let's talk a little bit about why we are doing this. So traditional PMIS systems have always focused on the project. The mantra has been just get the project done. There is a tremendous amount of documentation that gets created during the project. And at the end of the project, the contractors are ready to move on. They will share a binder with asset information. Maybe they'll give you a zip drive, but that asset information is not easily consumable. That leaves the owner spending a lot of time trying to set up their asset database with all of that information that is needed to operate the asset for the long haul. So we call that the project after the project. And why does that matter? So as you saw in the poll results, this can cost anywhere up to 2 to 4% of the project budget. You can spend up to a year or more trying to get all of that information in order to operate that asset. And so what Kahua has done, we put the asset front and center during that project lifecycle, and we consider that golden thread to be able to collect all of that asset information on the project that is then readily available for a digital handover. So what we do with Kahua, we weave that asset thread throughout the life cycle. As you'll see today, owners are able to define their asset taxonomy and nomenclature, so you can determine what you want to call your assets and what attributes you want to collect. And why this is important is because you can then keep track of that information throughout the asset life cycle. So as the assets are being planned and designed, that asset information can come in through Kahua ready for procurement and construction, so that that data is in a consistent format for all of your projects, so that you can then pass that along to your CMMS system in order to be able to operate that asset. So before I jump into the demo, let's begin with the end in mind. So as you can see, we put the asset front and center on the projects. This doesn't change how you operate your project. You're very easily able to connect assets to your project documentation. So what I'll show you today is how you can track the asset attributes throughout the project lifecycle, how you can link your project documents and files to those assets, how you'll also have that asset data repository so that you're able to leverage our analytics and see the data collection progress. And then also, you can look at the analytics across all of your assets from all of your different projects. And then lastly, I'll touch on the integrations. We have APIs in place where you can leverage integrations to pull data into Kahua and also send it out of Kahua. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start with the demo. And the first piece that I want to talk about is the analytics piece. Hopefully you'll be back in July to see the analytics webinar. That will be a great session. And today I'll touch a little bit on the analytics, how you can leverage your analytics to be able to get better information for your assets. So let me start there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, it should be opening. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. I am showing you Kahua's analytics. So with some of our recent implementations, you can see here, this analytics board is showing you the asset data collection. So these are your asset attributes. You can see the different asset types and the actual assets that get installed. You'll notice how many of the attributes have been filled in. You can see what that percent completion is. And then when your contractors are ready to move on to another project and they say everything's finished, you can very easily take a look at this dashboard. And if you see something has not been handed over, you can hold them accountable to provide that information. And you can even consider putting contractual language around that asset data collection as well. The other thing I want to show is a replacement planning dashboard. So this is built out where you can then, as you have all of your assets in Kahua from your projects, you can then also see how they are performing and what ones you need to consider for replacement planning. And then if you do facility condition assessments, I have one more dashboard here to show. This shows a summary where if you're looking at the different buildings that you operate, you can have a dashboard that shows what that facility condition assessment looks like. And what's nice with Kahua, with having the asset information here, you can keep it updated so that you have that continuous facility condition assessment. So that was a little bit that I wanted to show about the dashboard, so how you can leverage looking at your assets across your entire domain or across a project for the data collection. The next piece I'm going to show is how you can tag project documents. So I'm going to jump into my other domain. And so what we're looking at here, I am in an RFI for my West End expansion project. And you'll notice here, I have a chiller VFD installation question. And so what's really nice with the tagging of the asset documents is that there's no change in your process. So as you create your project documents like RFIs, your submittals, field observations, things like that, you can very easily tag the asset to that document that gets created. So you'll notice here on this RFI, this token, this chiller asset has already been tagged for the RFI. And I'll just show you real quick. When you edit the document or as you're creating it, we have this tagging icon. And so when you select that tagging icon, you'll then see that you can tag a location, the asset type, or the asset. So what's nice with the location, when you tag that, you can see it's the mechanical room. When you go to the assets, we filter out that list, so then you can select the asset that belongs to that location. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to show you one more app where you can see the tagging of the asset. So I'm opening up our punch list app. And you'll see here, I have a punch list around that same chiller asset that we just looked at. And you'll notice here that token is available on this document. So what's nice with Kahua, it's a fully integrated platform. And so here, this is a clickable link. So if you were looking at a project document and you saw the asset on that document, you can also click that token, and that will take you right over to the Asset Manager app. So the Asset Manager app is where you will have all of your types, assets, and systems. And you'll notice here, it brought us right into that chiller asset that we looked at. We saw the RFI and we saw that punch list item. So when you look at the asset information, you will see the details here. So you can see that it belongs to the electrical class. You can see what type it is. You can see the responsible company and the status for it. And then also you'll notice the attributes. So I want to talk a little bit about the attributes. As I mentioned, when we were looking at the analytic dashboards, as an organization, when you implement the assets, you will determine what attributes you're interested in collecting and what classes of assets you're also going to keep track of. So these attributes are completely customizable. That we have various types of attributes like text fields, dates, numbers, cost, all that types of information. So you can determine the attributes that you want to keep track of. There's an unlimited amount and it's completely customizable by the owner. You can see things here like your asset ID, is it a critical system? You can also track things. So as that asset continues to be operated, if you perform any condition assessments, you can keep track of that here as well. So you can see a deficiency description. You can see that in-service date, when it was last inspected and when it looks to be needing to be replaced, along with your serial number. And so those are just some of the attributes that you can track. You also can upload a photo, so you can use our media component to keep track of any photos that you need to for the asset. And then you'll notice here the linked documents. So these linked documents, as we looked at the RFI and that punch list, that's where you can then see these linked documents. And that gives you that history of what happened on the asset. So it's a really nice way to be able to keep track of what happened during that project as the asset was being delivered and installed. So I'm going to go ahead and close this view, and this will now show the asset registry. So this is in the, again, the Asset Manager app, and now we're looking at the asset registry, which is your list of assets for the project. The other thing that you can do is share out the project to the different specialties that will install the assets. So we have the sharing capabilities. You can see here, this has been shared out to Gen Coil. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to that other domain, and I'm going to switch over to that West End project in the Gen Coil Associates domain. So let me jump into that. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Asset Manager app here. And then what you'll see here, you'll notice this is the shared list. So what I see now are those two assets that I'm responsible for installing. So we have that chiller VFD. We looked at that earlier. And then you can see both of these are required by me to be updated. And so what's nice here is I only see the assets that I'm responsible for. You can share out the whole asset list, but you can choose to share, you know, what the end user is responsible for providing. And then this is where you can fill in the asset attribute information, and that immediately gets updated in the other domain. So a nice way to keep track of your data collection and then share that out with your contractors to fill in the information. So I'm going to go back to my other domain. So I'm back in that West End expansion project for my Midway Corp domain that we've been looking at. The next piece that I want to share is how we've tied the submittal process into the assets as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the submittal registry. So let me go ahead and switch over to that. So I am now in our submittals app, and I'm going to go ahead and select the submittal item so you can see the submittal registry for this project. And then you'll notice here that there is a warranty certificate submittal for that chiller, so that same asset that we've been looking at. And you can see when I select this, I've tagged the asset type, so that variable frequency drive. So that asset type is that product that will be installed, that you will have, documentation that you want to keep track of for that asset, like a warranty certificate or an O&M manual or cut sheet. When you tag that asset type, we have the same tagging mechanism here as I showed earlier. As long as that submittal is tagged with an asset type, this update asset type icon appears. It's enabled as long as you have that file ready and available. So the file is uploaded in our references, and you'll see here that warranty certificate is here. And so now at this point, I can just copy that over to the asset type. So when I select update asset type, we'll fill in some of that information. So we know that there is one asset type for this submittal. If you are capturing multiple asset types for submittal, that's fine. You would be able to select that here for the asset type, but we fill that in because there's only one. We also have just one file in the references. So we've already filled in that warranty certificate. And then we know we're selecting two attributes for that asset type. So when I showed the attributes earlier, you can also have a file type as an attribute that needs to be captured for your asset. And so that's what we have here. So for this particular asset type, we're looking to capture an O&M manual and the warranty certificate. So I'm going to go ahead and select that warranty certificate and then click continue, and then that will copy the warranty certificate over to the asset type. And again, this is a clickable link. So at this point, I can click on that link, and that will take me back to the Asset Manager app. It will bring me right over to the types, and then we'll be able to see the details for that type. So before I show you the file, again, we have details around that asset type, so we can see it belongs to the electrical class, and we can see that we have the name here, the variable frequency drive. If you're using Omni class codes or master format codes, they would appear here with the different class that's been defined. And then you can see the attributes for the type. So you'll notice these attributes are different from when we looked at the asset itself. So these attributes would be applicable across all the different installed assets that pertain to this particular asset type. So you can see, things like your amps, that life expectancy, your model number. And then you'll also see the files. So these are the file type attributes that I mentioned. This is that warranty certificate that we just copied over from the submittal. Again, you'll see linked documents here. So these are, you can see the submittal that this asset was linked to. So if you needed to see any of that submittal information, you can click on that link and it will take you over to the submittal registry, and you could take a look at that. So far I've showed you our dashboards, I've showed you how to tag the assets, and I've showed you the different attributes that you can collect information for, and how to copy the files that you collect in the submittals to the assets. Now what I'm going to show you is how to set this up. So we have an asset definition app, and this is a one-time setup. This is what you would set up for your domain. So when you decide what assets you're interested in keeping track of and what attributes that you want to standardize on, that's where you would come in here and set up your asset definition. So here, the first thing that we're looking at are the attributes. And again, these attributes are unique to your organization. We supply some standard ones that are commonly used out of the box. You can choose to use them or not use them. Again, you have different types. So you have text types, you have the date fields, cost fields, you have a Boolean, which is like a checkbox, and you can see you have, an unlimited amount of attributes that you can add here. Once you determine all the attributes that you're collecting, then you'll determine the classes of assets that you want to keep track of. So you'll see here, I just have a few in here for an example, but you have, we looked at that electrical equipment, your HVAC, plumbing, valves, things like that. So I'm going to select the electrical class. This will show you what we looked at earlier. So when we were looking at that chiller VFD asset, these are the type attributes. So you'll see here the types that were used, and we were able to take a look at that. This is where we had the O&M manual and that warranty certificate. And then if we look at the asset attributes, you'll see those details here as well. So we had that asset ID, deficiency, and in-service date. And we can look at 10 out of 14. So there are multiple attributes in here. So you might be noticing that we didn't have these selected. So you can choose to also hide different attributes on your project. So let me continue on. You can set up classes as templates as well. So if you have different types of projects where you're tracking different assets, you can create different classes, and those classes or those templates will store different classes of assets for your project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the classes project. And then you'll see here, these are the 4 classes that are being tracked for this particular project. And then if we take a look at the electrical class, you'll notice here there's an option to include. So by default, all of those attributes are included. And you can see that for your type. And then if we look at the asset attributes themselves, you can see for this particular project, just the assets that were attributes that we're keeping track of. So these were set to no. So this is just to highlight there is some configurability here, across the projects as well. So the last thing I want to cover is the integration. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and go back to our presentation. All right, and I'm assuming we're back on our slide. So I'm going to go through these real quickly. So we did cover the asset collection. So this slide just shows, all the different documentation on a project where you can, collect information about your asset. So that's what we just went through in Kahua. And then now I'll touch on the integration. So we have APIs for the asset suite. So you can leverage those for integrations. You can bring information in from Revit as your project is progressing. You can also then send information out of Kahua to your CMMS systems. And then what I'll show today is the Esri integration that one of our partners built. So I have a real quick 1-minute demo just to show how they've pulled asset data out of Kahua and are able to show that in Esri. So I'm going to go ahead and click next.
Now, let's see how we can leverage these features in real time. When you click on a project, the screen refreshes to display the cost summary for the project, as well as the applicable asset classes. The list of assets in the 3D visualization also updates to show assets specific to the selected project. By clicking on an asset icon in the 3D visualization, it reveals detailed notes about the asset. This screen can be customized to include relevant information fields from the Kahua asset database. As you scroll down, you'll find a Kahua link. Clicking on the Kahua logo takes you directly to our Project Management Information System, PMIS. Kahua. Simply log in using your credentials, and Kahua will direct you straight to the asset you selected on the ArcGIS map. If you are already logged into Kahua, you won't need to re-enter your credentials.
All right, so that was a quick overview of our Esri integration. And now let's see. So the last thing I want to touch on before we jump into the Q&A is just to reiterate what we went through today. So we showed you how you can leverage analytics to view your asset information and the data collection process, how you can tag and collect asset attributes and files as well. And what's very valuable here is, all of those stakeholders that participate on your projects and even downstream that need asset information are able to leverage Kahua's common data environment for that information. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing all of the capabilities. I'm glad to be able to share that with you today, and I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start the Q&A session of this webinar. Before we get started with the first question, we do have one last poll question for you guys. So while those answers are coming in, Jen can go ahead with the first question from the Q&A box.
All right, great. So let me get started. All right, so what are the importing capabilities? So I didn't touch on this today in the demo, but we do have import capabilities through Excel, similar to what we have in all of the other apps in Kahua. So you can create an import template through Excel and pull in asset information. We also have COBie import and export capabilities as well. So we can read a COBie file. Let's see. Does Kahua use QR codes for each of the assets? And do you have a recommended asset identification and labeling vendor? So yes, we do use QR codes. We have mobile capabilities as well, so you can view the asset information and update it out in the field. And then we do have a playbook. So, if you're thinking about how to get started, the one key thing there is being able to take advantage of. So we have a playbook that helps you assess what assets you want to keep track of, how you want to label them, and what attributes you're interested in keeping track of, along with identifying, roles and responsibilities, and then any kind of contractual language that you might want to take advantage of to help, enforce getting that asset information as you need it. Okay, I'm just trying to read some of my questions. Will it also track the asset once the asset has been delivered? So yes, you will be able to keep track of that asset information. You can, if you send that over to your CMMS system, we're not looking to replace that. That information is there, but you will be able to continue to have that asset information in Kahua. And you will see, as I showed in the analytics, you can keep track of the asset information that you want. So, if your warranties may be expiring, you can see that information as well. So there's a question here. Does customizable mean we get control of number of fields, types of fields, and layout of fields? Yes, you do have control of that. And there are not a certain number of date fields or string fields. This is completely dynamic. So it's really up to you as the owner to decide how you want to collect that asset information and what attributes you're interested in collecting. A couple other things that I wanted to point out as well. We do have a status notification. So the asset has a status field. So if you need to notify, let's say, finance that an asset is being disposed, you can put a notification on the asset. And so when that status changes, an email will be sent to that recipient who has been selected for the notification. And then also, if you are creating your own apps, you can also enable the tagging mechanism in your own apps as well, so that you can link back to the assets. So it looks like those were all the questions.